Thank you, Jeff. I didn't know till this morning that he played banjo. Yeah, I couldn't think what it was. But when Waylon, I heard Waylon this morning say he had a sore throat and he asked Jeff if he'd sing for him tonight. I was hoping he'd bring that banjo back because half a dozen of you told me if he plays again, tell him to bring that banjo. There was some foot stomping going on this morning, and that was good. That's good. It is a pleasure to have Lisa Galloway with us this evening from Crossroads. Is this the third time you've been with us?
I think so.
Third or maybe fourth? I couldn't.
At least the third.
Yeah, at least the third, I'm sure. So she's an old veteran of speaking to you folks, and an old veteran of the war that goes on out there for life. And we're glad for the work that Crossroads does. So without me saying anything any further, I'm going to invite her to come and share with us. Give her your attention as she shares this evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I always look forward. I love meeting the people in our churches because our churches are just amazing. And churches like yours are a little bit more of a challenge because I know that I'm preaching to the choir. And I don't want to just tell you the stuff you already know. So I'm always trying to find something that maybe God has been speaking to my heart and the things that I'm learning that are relevant to the topic of sanctity of life. So I'm not just giving you, I don't want you to know before I get up here, oh yeah, she's going to say this and this and this, and she's going to do Psalm 139, and it's just all those standard things, because you guys know all that stuff. So I'm just going to share a little bit of my heart tonight, and I'll give you the rundown of what Crossroads does. I'll do that first so I don't forget and run out of time. We have 4 offices. We've been around for about 35 years. Started in Lewistown with a little office and a little group of Mennonite ladies after Roe v. Wade passed, and they realized what an issue abortion was becoming. They just got together one day after church and said, we need to do something for the women in our area. And this little group of Mennonite ladies started Crossroads Pregnancy Center, and it was called Crossroads Problem Pregnancy Center, I think, at first, back in the 70s. And it has just grown and grown. It's no longer Mennonite. It's a non-denominational ministry. We have people from a variety of denominations. Our only requirement is that people love Jesus, if to be on the board or to be on the staff or to volunteer. Beyond that, we can work with it. So that's our heartbeat. And we have 4 offices now. We still have the one in Lewistown, which just in the last year moved into a new facility right on kind of the main drag. If you don't know where it is, it's when you go into Lewistown, you go past Walmart. It's on the right before you get to like Dairy Queen and on that stretch. The Yoring's Hearing is in it. It's a beautiful facility. The guy that owns the building is a Christian, and he bent over backwards to get the place all fixed up the way we needed it and just the way we wanted it. He rented us the basement for no extra money. He charged us like the standard rate for the upstairs, and then just threw in the basement, which is finished, and our boutique is down there, so that's awesome. Our Huntington office, we just bought a building. It's the first real estate purchase for Crossroads, so that's kind of been a big deal. But it's cheaper than renting. So overall, I mean, it's some money up front to get it all up to snuff and passing code and all that good stuff, but the mortgage monthly is less than paying rent on a much smaller facility. So it just makes sense in the long run to do that, and God opened the door to allow that to happen. We just had our kind of grand opening and open house last Sunday, and had a good group of people from the community came out to check it out and to pray. We had a group of pastors come in a few days before that and just went through and prayed in every room in the building and just asked God to bless it and to be present and for His Spirit to be very real and very felt and active in that place.
Amen.
We have an office in Mifflintown. It's been there for it's the newest one. It's been there since I think 2010, something like that. 2009, 10, somewhere in there. it's the one that's struggling a little bit. We're trying to figure that out. The one odd thing is that we have these 4 different offices, and every single one of them has a different personality. The clientele is just different, and it's just the craziest thing. You wouldn't think that, they're not that spread apart. You wouldn't think from Mount Union to Huntingdon there would be that much difference, but there is. My clients are just different than Laura's clients in Huntingdon, and Teresa's clients in Mifflintown, and Bonnie's clients in Lewistown. It's weird how that works, but it's just, they all sort of, it's just different, and the way we have to approach it is different, the way we reach out, it's just different. It's just odd. You wouldn't think that, but it really just is. Every office, and Mifflintown is struggling a little right now to get people. We know the need is there. It's not like girls aren't getting pregnant, and it's not like there isn't poverty there and people need it, but just getting them to come in is just difficult. So pray for that. Because we're trying to figure out what to do about that, because it's sort of fluctuated over the years, and we're trying to get some stability there. So just pray for the Mifflintown office. I know that one's not that's the furthest one out from here, but they do the same work that the rest of us do. My office in Mount Union has been there in the same place since it opened in 2007, I believe. I've been there since 2010. And it went through some ups and downs at first too. And when the economy tanked in, was it 2000? Yeah, it was, well, and it really got bad in a year or two after that, and the board actually, one of their game plans to keep Crossroads afloat at one point was potentially to close the Mount Union office, because at that time it was the slowest one. They no sooner said that than my phone started ringing off the hook, and my door it was like a revolving door, just people coming and going, and it started picking up, and it's been that way ever since. We still, we go through these normal fluctuations, but it has never dropped off to that point again. So that's been exciting. We do offer pregnancy tests. That's kind of our, that's not the biggest thing we do, but that's one of the things that we're known the most for. And we do that. We do free pregnancy tests. We never charge for anything. Everything that Crossroads does is free. We do ultrasounds. As you know, we've been doing that for a couple years now. And we're actually there hasn't been any decisions made, but I'll just tell you this little secret, that we are considering buying a second machine, a permanent one to put in the Lewistown office, because it's our busiest office, and then there'll still be the portable unit that we have that'll be in Huntingdon. And the hope is to start seeing clients in Mount Union hopefully before too terribly many more months go by. There's red tape with that, because that involves different licenses with the state, and so it's not just as simple as having our nurse come in and you do an ultrasound. There's all kinds of permissions and red tape, and we'd have to put a sink in and change our bathroom and there's a lot that goes into that. So, but that is the hope, is that Mount Union will be next to be able to actually do ultrasounds, because transportation is such an issue. My people, a lot of them they don't drive, or if they do drive, they don't have vehicles. And getting cart or whatever to get to Huntingdon, it can be a bit of an ordeal. And sometimes they just don't do it. And so if we can offer them that in Mount Union, that would be awesome. We're doing STD testing. We screen for gonorrhea and chlamydia. Yay. Good Sunday evening topic of conversation. But those are two of the more common STDs in the area. If somebody has one of the less common ones, there's a very good chance that they have one of those too also. So those two are used as screenings, because they're a simple test and it's inexpensive to test for. And we have an agreement with J.C. Blair to process those through their lab and get the results. And that does a couple things. For one thing, it helps to get some of that stuff off the streets so that people aren't continuing to spread it. And it also just gives us another inroad to be able to speak truth into the lives of people. And it gets some men to come in our doors that wouldn't otherwise. And we get maybe, a half hour to talk to them about the decisions they're making in life, and whether this is really the best thing. And if you really thought through this, and maybe this is an opportunity, you had that clean test, maybe this is an opportunity to rethink some things. And then down the road, if they have a girlfriend that's pregnant or something, they've already been into our office, they're going to think, Crossroads pregnant, they were nice to me. They didn't act like I was, this unholy heathen. They treated me with respect and kindness, and maybe I'll take my girl there. And then we get a chance to speak into her life. So it's that's a growing thing.
Amen. Good.
I've just started doing that in Mount Union. We started that, and everything starts in Lewistown and Huntington because those are our busier offices, and then it comes to Mount Union and Mifflintown. So I've just recently started doing STD testing in my office. Before that, I had to send them to Huntington. But again, it's just always red tape whenever you do anything that involves that word medical. So it just takes a little while to get everything going and spread out. But it's growing. The ministry is growing. God keeps opening doors, sometimes faster than we can keep up with him. But it's good. We have our biggest ministry is and has been for years is our Bridges program, and that is where girls and guys, we have increasingly have more guys come in, more couples that to earn like crib, car seat, baby clothes, diapers, that sort of thing. And they can earn, for example, if they want to earn a crib and mattress, they have to come 12 times. That gives us 6 to 12 hours, depending on how long they're there each time, to speak some truth into their lives, to let them see that the church isn't just a bunch of judgmental people. And that's been sadly some of their experience of the church, because some churches, as we all know, some do a really good job at sharing the love of Jesus, some not so much. And some of my clients have experienced those not so much churches and have been really hurt. And not that, sometimes it's the truth was spoken, but it wasn't in love. And, we all know how that happens. I don't need to go into details on that. But it gives us a chance to begin to heal some of those hurts and help people to see that that's not Jesus. That that he has some ways that he asks us to do things. He has an order of things in marriage and in our relationships, and we get the cart in front of the horse and things go off the rails and we have problems. But he gives us those rules not to be mean and spiteful, because he loves us and he knows how it works. And we get to share that with them in a loving and kind way, and to let them know that we care about them and that God cares about them and wants what's best for them. And he isn't just there waiting with a lightning bolt to zap them, but he really wants to give them a full and abundant life.
Amen.
And that's why he has rules, because that's just the way life works. We have boundaries. There are boundaries in this world for a reason.
Right.
And when we can learn to see that through the eyes of love and not through the eyes of just spite or whatever, it's how some people see God, it starts to look a lot different. And during the Bridges program, we talk about pregnancy, we do parenting classes, we talk about relationships and making good relationship choices, we do Bible studies. I pray for my clients a lot. One of my favorite things in the world is when I ask a client what they believe spiritually, because we always tell them up front, usually on the phone before they even get there. They know that we're a Christian ministry. And when they come in and they're sitting there with me, I'll say, "Now, I told you that we're a Christian ministry. I'd like to know what you believe." And that is, I'll tell you what, you don't know what you're going to hear when you ask that. I have had some crazy things. Sometimes people just have their own stuff that they've made up because it just made sense to them. And that always blows me away. But my very favorite is when somebody tells me they're an atheist. I just love that. Not because I want them to be an atheist, but because that gives me a chance to pray that God will reveal himself to them. And I cannot tell you, I've had several times when I've had someone who said, "Well, I'm an atheist," and they're a little hesitant. I'm like, "Okay, that's okay. We can talk about that. How'd you come to that conclusion," or whatever. And also, at the end, it doesn't matter if they say that or not, I'll ask them if I can pray for them. And 9 times out of 10, they'll look at me funny. And I'll say, "It's okay if you don't want me to. Yeah, you can still come back. There's no requirement. It's just I ask everybody." And 9 times out of 10, "Well, no, that's okay. I guess that's okay." And it is so much fun to sit there and pray for an atheist while they're hearing. And you just pray, "Jesus, just reveal yourself. Just reveal yourself. I know that Susie here doesn't think you exist, but I know you do, and I know you love her, and I can't wait to see you show her that."
Amen.
And that is my favorite thing in the world, because half the time they're crying by the time you're done, and you're like, "Yeah, you're an atheist, all right." And they come back. And it's awesome to watch those things happen, and watch God. You don't always have the big salvation moment at that point, but you just get to keep sprinkling those seeds and plowing that earth up and tilling the ground. And just, you just kind of watch those little steps happen. And I love that. So atheists are my favorite. We have a program called Reaching Destinations. It used to just be called Reach, and that's our abstinence education branch. And that has gone through a whole overhaul in the past year. We have somebody new, her name's Marcia Metzger, who has taken over that, and she is actually from, her and her husband are pastor and his wife at the Alliance Church in Mount Union, and they moved here from Florida, so she's got the whole southern accent and everything going on. And she did abstinence education there. And so she took what she was doing, what our program was, did a whole ton of research so that it's evidence-based, because we go into the high schools, the public high schools in the area, and as well as go into youth groups too, but we really focus on those public high schools and going into the health classes. And she is a certified sexual risk avoidance specialist. That's the fancy term now that you have to use if you want to be, all official and recognized by the state, and evidence-based is a big thing in the schools. And so that's what we are, and a lot of our curriculum is based out of two places, and this just cracks me up. It comes from Scripture. We can't tell them that when we go into the high schools, but it is. And the CDC. The CDC backs up what God says in His Word about sexuality. Go figure. Isn't that beautiful? I love that. I just think that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I have learned is people see this big gulf between religion and science. Christianity's over here, science is over here. When we understand them both correctly, when we understand God's Word and we understand science correctly, they support each other. They prove each other. And if there's a place where they disagree, what I have learned is if my understanding of the Bible and my understanding of science conflict, I'm wrong about one of them. I'm just not understanding something properly. Because God created all of this. He created the way science works. And His Word, sometimes the wording is maybe old. It was written several thousand years ago when people didn't understand things the way we do now, necessarily. But it doesn't contradict the truth of science. And sometimes our science is messed up. Sometimes our understanding of God's Word is a little off. But when we understand them correctly, they support each other. There is no divide. It all works together. It flows together beautifully. And so that's what happens when we teach sexual risk avoidance based on CDC, the Center for Disease Control, which is about the most unchristian thing out there. But where they are getting the science correct, it agrees. And it's showing all the things that we've been teaching all along. It's all being proven by science. So I love that. Next to atheists, that's one of my other favorite things. We have a program called, and this is new, so this, for you ladies, this might be something fun for you if you haven't thought about it already. For years we've had church groups, and usually ladies groups will have baby showers and then bring presents to Crossroads and drop them off, or sometimes they'll have one of us come and speak, and then they'll give us all these presents to put in our baby boutiques so the girls can come and earn them, or we make up little gift bags, we call them layettes, when babies are born. Then when the next time a girl comes in, we give her this little gift bag and let them know that this is all stuff that's donated from our churches. And one of our desires is to get our clients connected to a local church. And so what we're trying, and just started in the last year, is we have these things we call lamb showers, and it's Love a Mom and Baby is what LAMB stands for. It's a little corny, but hey, it works. And the idea is that a ladies group will adopt one of my clients, and when I have a church that wants to have a shower, I will ask my clients who are pregnant if they would be interested, and then I have each of them fill out a form, and we put it in a box, and I draw one. That's just fair. That way I don't have to pick and choose who gets it, because I don't usually have enough. I usually have more clients that would like to have showers than churches that are having them. And so we just do a drawing. That way it's fair, and they don't have to feel like playing favorites or anything. And then you come to the center in Mount Union, and you bring a group of like 5 or 6 ladies. You have a baby shower for the girl. She comes, she brings a friend or her mom or whatever with her. And you get to actually connect with an actual live client. And our hope is that some relationships can begin to be built that way. confess something. Once in a while, I do stack the deck just a little bit. If I know, like if you guys did a shower and I had a girl that I knew was like from this area, I might kind of put hers on the top before I. So, because what I want is for her to get connected to a church that's close to her. So, I do stack the deck just a tiny bit that way sometimes. But I have clients from all over the county, so there's usually still a few to choose from, even if I do try to keep it sort of geographically limited that way. And that's been really fun. That's just starting. We're just starting. The Lewistown office is just going crazy with these. They have all kinds. They're having them constantly. Huntington and Mount Union are taking a little longer to get traction with it, but that's something that we're working on. So if you would like to reach out to somebody and meet one of our, actual clients instead of just having, the fake names that we use to protect our confidentiality and all that, you get to actually know the girl, get to, sometimes by the time the shower happens, they've already had the babies, and then you get to meet the baby, and it's all fun. So, and they get to see that the body of Christ isn't just these judgmental people that sit in churches and think they're bad for living the life they live, but they actually care. And just because, and just like God has the ways he wants us to do things because he cares about us and because he knows how our life works the best, that's what his body should be too. And so that's what we want these girls and their boyfriends to begin to see, is that the church isn't this mean and scary, harsh and awful place. It's a place for hurting people and wounded souls to come and find healing and help and hope. And so I would love it if you guys would give me a call and say, hey, I would like to have one of those showers. I will send you some paperwork and tell you what you need to do and get you all set up with that. Another thing that we're doing is, for a while, we have offered post-abortion help, but it's mostly been one-on-one. We're really making a push in this year, and starting in February is our first group, to have a group Bible study. It's called Surrendering the Secret, and it's for women who are post-abortive. Because there is just so much healing that needs to happen. And there are so many women that have been through the heartache of abortion. And there's so many women sitting in our churches. When you look around on a day like today, odds are there are some women missing because they knew what was going to be talked about in church today, and they knew what they had been through, and they just couldn't face it, and they stayed home. There's some of those same women on Mother's Day. You don't see them show up at church because it just hurts too much. They need healing, and that healing is available. And so we are wanting to offer that to the women in our churches and in our communities. It is a Bible study. It's a faith-based program. It lasts for 8 weeks. We're starting, hopefully, on February 13th. It's a Tuesday, and it'll run for eight Tuesdays. And then after that, we'll see. We're hoping to be able to do them at least a couple times a year and just sort of keep rotating through. Depending on how much demand there is, we'll do it more or less. But if you know anybody that's been through abortion, if you yourself have been through abortion, you're not alone. And even in our churches, the statistics show that it's not really any different in the churches than it is outside the church. There's like 40 to 50% of women will experience at least one abortion in their lifetime. And that's not much different for the church. Sometimes, and some of the reason for that is if a girl gets pregnant and she's not married, there's still that shame factor in the church, because that's not the way God intended. But it's also not what he intended for her to have to choose between saving face in church and giving the life of her child. It's a painful thing, and these girls need to know that there is healing and there is hope. And it doesn't matter if the abortion happened 6 months ago or 60 years ago. And it doesn't matter if it was one or if they had 7, 8, 9, 10 abortions. We are there to help, and we're there to extend healing and to help them to really grab a hold of the forgiveness and grace of Jesus. Because abortion is not bigger than his blood. It's not more powerful than the blood of Jesus. Amen. He shed that blood for that girl that had the abortion just as much as he did for the person that sits and gossips about, whoever. It doesn't matter. Sin is sin in God's eyes. And some sins have bigger consequences than others, but they all separate us from God.
Right.
And we want people to know that that separation doesn't have to be permanent. That God loves them and he wants to take that away and he wants to join them back to himself and put his arms around them and love them.
Amen.
And so that's our big thing this year, is to really get the post-abortion groups going. So if you know anybody who needs that healing, or if you yourself do, please don't suffer another day thinking that you have to keep this secret. And everybody in the groups will be asked to sign a confidentiality agreement that they will, what happens in group stays in group. That's the way those kind of groups work. They need to be respected. And hopefully in time, as you experience healing, you begin to be able to talk about it. Maybe not with everybody, may never stand up in front of a congregation and give your testimony, but you may talk to somebody else who's really hurting, who's been through something similar, and you'll then have the freedom to say, you know what? I experienced that, and this is what God did for me. And be able to do it in a way that isn't so overwhelmingly just so emotional that you just can't catch your breath anymore, but you'll be able to talk about it from a place of healing and not from a place of just utter brokenness. And that hope is there, and that healing is absolutely there, and God is holding it out to anybody who will reach out and take it. So that is our heart, and that is what we really want to see happen this year. We want to see women begin to be delivered from the heartbreak and the secret of abortion in their past. See, this paper looks pretty harmless, doesn't it? It's just a paper with some words that if you had that was on the wall, you'd be able to easily read it. However, this paper represents a violation of our constitutional freedoms. It represents a violation of freedom of speech and freedom of religion that's happening in California right now, and if it's successful, will spread throughout the rest of the country. What this paper says is, California has public programs that provide immediate, free, or low-cost access to comprehensive family planning services, including all FDA-approved methods of contraception, prenatal care, and abortion for eligible women. To determine whether you qualify, contact the county social services office at, and then it gives whatever the local phone number is. As of right now, it's in court, but California law says that all pregnancy centers, faith-based pregnancy centers, if they do not provide abortions in their center, they have to post this where it's visible for everybody that comes in to see. And it has to be in this size font. This is exactly what would have to be hanging on the wall in a waiting area or right in a very visible place. And so what they're doing is they're forcing pregnancy centers to advertise for the state because they're not giving out enough abortions and they want to do more. And pregnancy centers aren't helping them, so they're trying to force them. Not that I have any bitterness against that or anything. But this case is in the court right now, and you may or may not have heard about it. There's a group called NIFLA. It's the National Institute of Family and Life Advocates, and they are a legal group. They oversee pregnancy centers, like they help us stay on track of things legally and make sure that they help us. When we started our ultrasound program, NIFLA helped us with that, to figure out all the red tape and everything that we had to do to make sure that we were doing everything properly and in order, and getting all the trainings we needed and all of that kind of stuff. NIFLA does that. Well, NIFLA has taken up this lawsuit, and in March sometime, date hasn't been set, but they're expecting it to be in March. They will be arguing this case in front of the Supreme Court in Washington. And so please be praying for that, because if this doesn't get shut down, our centers will all have to decide how we're going to go forward. Because what is a $500 fine, the way the law is currently written, there's a $500 fine for the first offense, and if they leave it up there, it's $1,000 every time, and they can come in daily. Most of our centers, we're faith-based, we're nonprofit, most of us don't get government money, we're run on donations. We can't afford to be spending $1,000 a day on fines because we're not allowed to have freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Not that God couldn't do that, but basically the centers in California are in a place where they either have to decide to promote abortion by hanging this or finance abortion by paying the fines. They're really stuck between a rock and a hard place. And so, and it's not just there. Hawaii has passed a similar law. Maryland had passed one, but the local, I don't know, whatever, one of the local courts shot it down. And there have been a couple states where it's been shot down, a couple where it's been upheld. And so it's finally made it to the Supreme Court. So please be praying for that, because even though this is way out in California, and sometimes it's easy to sort of brush off what goes on in California because they're all crazy out there. Except for the ones that want to secede. I think that's sort of, I sort of like that. But, you know, they want to make the state of New California and separate that from California. But if it's allowed to stand there, it will be allowed to stand everywhere. Right. And so it's not, this isn't just a California wacko thing. This is a nationwide freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom of speech issue. So please be praying. And it's, you know, it's not going to just be pregnancy centers. It's going to hit other things. You know how those things are. You get that poison in one place and it just spreads.
Right, right.
So be praying. And so far everything has, on our side, on the pro-life side, things have been peaceful. It's been done orderly and, you know, going through the right process of steps, and there have been prayer vigils, and they're going to continue to be, and they're asking people to come to the Supreme Court and pray. The other side sometimes doesn't like things to be peaceful and in order, so it could get messy before this is all over. But just be praying for that. That's not Crossroads specifically, but it definitely will affect Crossroads one way or the other, depending on how that decision comes down. It's called the Reproductive Fact Act, which is sort of ironic in and of itself because it's really not too factual. And it was signed by Governor Jerry Brown. It mandates that medical pro-life pregnancy centers post a notice in their waiting room in 22-point type, which is what I showed you. And if they're non-medical centers, then they have to post in 48-point type, which would be even bigger print, a statement saying that they're not medical and have no physicians on staff. Well, if they're not, what other place do you know that they don't have to post what they don't do? And it's a mess. But anyway, just please be praying about that. I came across this, and I had heard of this before, but it had been a while. But have you ever heard of the 2% rule? The idea is that, well, for example, Campus Crusade for Christ at Louisiana State University, the director said that his goal was to enlist 2% of the campus in their programs because they had discovered that with 2%, which is just not really very big, that's just a tiny little minority, they could change the moral climate on campus. And so if we look at that from a Christian perspective, sometimes we feel overwhelmed because we just feel like there's only just this little few of us in this great big messed up world with all these crazy things going on. But it doesn't take, you don't have to have a majority. A minority can have a very powerful impact. And if you don't believe that, look at some of the stuff that's going on in the world, the minority things that are getting pushed in weird ways. And, it's some crazy things happen to suit, you know, a handful of people. The other side gets this. We need to get it.
Right.
And this needs to be part of being, you know, as wise as serpent, harmless as a dove. To understand that we don't have to have millions and millions of people out doing things. All it takes is just us. It just takes as few of us. I mean, God knew what, imagine, again, God knew what he was saying when he said, wherever there are 2 or 3 gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them. Well, if you have the God of the universe gathered in your midst, does it really matter how many of you are? And is there any limit to the change that can happen in our culture and in our world?
Right.
So we need to walk, and I just heard somebody say that we don't fight for victory, we fight from victory. We need to grasp that. We really need to get that. We're not fighting for the victory. We're fighting from a place of victory. We have the high ground. It's already ours. We're just cleaning up.
Praise God.
It's not something that we're losing. Now, the world may not always look like that, but I've read it. We win in the end. And that victory's already been won. God isn't bound by time. He already has that victory. It already belongs to him.
Mm-hmm.
And in Scripture, Ephesians 6:12, we've all heard this, but we need to remember it. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Our battle is not against people. It's not against abortion doctors. It's not against the crazy politicians in California who are passing these laws. They're deceived. They're held captive. They are victims in a spiritual battle.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't see that. They've been brainwashed, but they need rescued. We don't need to fight against them. We need to fight for them and claim their souls so that they can be set free and fight on the side of right and righteousness and justice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard, because when I hear stories about some of these abortion doctors, and I think they have to know what they're doing, they see it. They're looking at that ultrasound. They see what they're taking out of that woman. They have to know. My heart does not want to have compassion for those people. It is not my nature to be compassionate towards, and I'm one of the most compassionate people you could ever hope to meet. I don't have a judgmental heart, but when people are deliberately hurting other people, I have a hard time with that. And that's really hard for me to get past. And that's an area of weakness that I struggle with and that I really need to pray about. But even those doctors and the crazy, some of our politicians are just nuts. But they're held captive. They are in bondage to the enemy and they don't see it. Some of them really believe they're doing the right things. I don't think they're doing it from a place of spite or evil. Some of them really think they're doing the right thing. Some of them are just selfish and power hungry. But some of them really, I think, believe they're doing the right thing. And so we need to be praying against that, but realize that we already have the victory because Jesus already won it.
Amen.
He conquered death. He conquered sin. He created this world. He spoke it into existence. And we serve him. We don't need to cower in a corner. We need to stand up strong and brave and be strong and courageous. And Joshua, I don't know how many times had to hear, fear not, be strong and courageous. That makes me feel good because I figure if that warrior needed to hear that, it's probably okay that I need to hear it. So I want you guys to be encouraged. I want to leave here and have you guys be encouraged and ready to engage in the fight and in the battle. And whether that is for pro-life, the pro-life cause, whether God has called you into some form of evangelism, whatever he's called you into, go into it in a spirit of victory and knowing that you have won and that the King of Kings has called you and that you serve at his request and at his pleasure. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful things here, and there's some things that don't look so great, but like I said, we know the end of the story, and we win.
Amen.
And it's good. It's good for the church to confront the moral and spiritual issues of the day. And especially when we do it on the basis of God's Word. We shouldn't be surprised at the opposition we receive. There's a saying that I don't know who said this to begin with, but I think it's good. It says, remember, you only get flack when you're flying over the target. The enemy's not going to take shots at you if you're way off base.
Right.
They're going to leave you alone. So the fact that we're under attack, it just means that we're doing what we should be doing. In 1 Corinthians 16:9, it says, there is a wide open door for a great work here. And Paul wrote this he was in Ephesus, he was writing it to the Corinthians. But he said, there's a wide open door for a great work here, and many people are responding. But there are also many who oppose me. If Paul had to go through it, we are too. And that's okay, because some of those people are going to come around. Either way, we're walking in obedience. And there is victory.
Praise God.
I'm going to close with this idea. In Genesis, when we read the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, verse 20. Genesis 18, verse 20. I'm just going to read a little bit of this. And the Lord said, the outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is indeed great, and their sin is exceedingly grave. I will go down now and see if they have done entirely according to its outcry, which has come to me, and if not, I will know. Then the men turned away from there and went toward Sodom, while Abraham was still standing before the Lord. And Abraham came near and said, will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you indeed sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of 50 righteous? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to slay the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous and the wicked are treated alike. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly? So the Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, I will spare the whole place on their account. And Abraham answered, now behold, I have ventured to speak to the Lord, although I am but dust and ashes. Suppose the 50 righteous are lacking 5. Will you destroy the whole city because of 5? And he said, I will not destroy it if I find 45 there. And he spoke to him yet again. And we know he went down to 40 and 30 and 20. And then he finally said, if there are just 10 people, will you destroy it? And God said, no. If there are 10 righteous people there, I won't destroy it. And it was the sin of Sodom, and there's debate over just exactly what all that sin was. Some of it was sexual sin, some of it was pride and arrogance, and they were cruel to the poor, and it was just a lot of nastiness, I think, going on, much like there is in our country. But again, it comes back to that principle of the 2%. He was only looking for 10 people, and the one place I looked up said there may have been as many as 250,000 people there. 10 people in 250,000, and that would have been enough to change their destiny. And it wasn't just, they weren't just destroyed. Sodom and Gomorrah wasn't destroyed just because of the sin. They were destroyed because of a lack of a righteous presence. And so if those righteous had been there, God would have worked for them, because he's not willing that any should perish. But those righteous weren't, there wasn't even a small presence of righteousness in that city, and so those cities were destroyed because all they were doing was spreading evil. There was no hope for them to come back from that. But there is hope here. As much of a mess as our country is in, and as much of a negative direction as we're going, there are sparks of light. I mean, this blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind, and you referenced it. Who would have guessed 2 or 3 years ago that Donald Trump would be the voice for life?
Yeah, amen.
I mean, seriously, where did that come from?
Praise God.
I didn't see that coming. And there are days I would like to just smack that man silly because he says such dumb things. And he just doesn't, he has no filter. He needs to know he's not a reality TV star anymore. He's the president of the United States, and maybe start acting with a little bit of dignity. But at the same time, he's the one that's speaking out for life.
Amen.
I don't understand that. I don't understand how that happened. I don't understand where his heart is or what he's thinking, but I just pray for him. And we need to pray for our president, no matter who he is, and no matter whether we like him or not. Sometimes when we dislike him, we need to pray harder than when we do like him. And so we just need to pray for God's will, and I don't know what's going on there, but if he's going to stand for life, I got to support that.
Amen.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that man's head is sometimes, but you would not have thought that. A few years ago when he first announced that he was running for president, I don't think anybody saw this happening. And my prayer is that God really has gotten a hold of him and done a work in his heart. And he has some growing to do, obviously, but I am just praying that whatever it is that's happened is real, and it's gone down deep into the core of who he is and will bear fruit. And it's bearing some kind of fruit. I mean, something good is happening there because he's standing for life. I mean,
Amen. Amen.
I don't know. My final thought is lost people matter to God because he created them in his image. We're all created in his image. Whether we are walking for him at the moment or not, we're created in his image. He loves us, and he wants to do great things in our lives and through our lives. And as a Christian and as somebody who is pro-life and believes in the image of God, and everybody I come in contact with and every set of eyes I look into, my goal is to see the image of God there. And so when I speak truth, my challenge to us and my challenge to myself is that we would do it in a winsome way, in a way that is I had to look up winsome because I love that word. I've heard that, always heard it, but it's just recently, it's like God has really been pounding that home with me, that is how he wants his people to be. And winsome means attractive or charming in an open, delightful way, and even almost containing an element of like childlike innocence. And Jesus said that we need to become like little children. And so that's my challenge to us, is that we would speak the truth in love in a winsome way to a lost and hurting world that desperately needs him, because he created us and he created them in his image. And he has a plan and a purpose to redeem, and that image is redeemable in every single one of us. In the most evil and vile person out there, that image is redeemable.
Amen.
And that's what we need to see when we meet people, and when we meet people that we just don't even like. So let me pray for you, and then I will turn it over to whoever wants to finish up. Lord, I just thank you for this opportunity to be here tonight. I thank you for these sweet people. Thank you for the way they have supported Crossroads over the years. Thank you for the way they've not only supported Crossroads, but they have just worked for you and have supported your work and your ministry, and they have done the things that you have called them to in the place where you have planted them. Lord, just continue to help them to do that. Lord, give them your vision for the future, for this church, and for your purpose, for this particular body of believers in this place at this time. And I just ask that this church would grow. Not just for numbers, Lord, but because there are souls out there that are created in your image that need your redemption.
Amen.
And I just ask that you would give this church the vision that it needs to be able to reach out and really just begin to bring those people in. Lord, that they will be able to go out into the community, and that as a result of that, the people would come in. Because we know people aren't going to just walk through the doors of a church anymore. It just doesn't happen a whole lot. So, but we can go out to them, and we can go out and meet them where they are. And I just ask that you would give them your wisdom and your insight, and Lord, as that messiness happens, that you would help them to just know how to manage all of that in a way that honors you and encourages people to grow. And then I just ask that when you come back, that this church would be full of people who are just completely and utterly surrendered to you.
Amen.
People who look into the eyes of those in their community and in their world and see you and see your creation. And Lord, I just thank you. Thank you for all that you do. And I just ask you to bless this church. Lord, just finish off that last little bit they need to pay off the roof and take them on to the next thing. And Lord, I thank you for that and for all that you do. And I just give you praise and glory for all of it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.